If you were starting today, what equipment would you start with? I'm going to get into specific DAWs and microphones and things here in a minute, but how would you get your start if you were just like, okay, go to the Sweetwater side, I got to start in order to produce pretty decent, if not professional music. Let's say you are already a professional, because a lot of people ask me this all the time. What do I get? What do I start with? How do I start? And this could be for a piano, keyboard person, a guitar person, or people who don't play anything. What's the starting point?
For me, starting point would be, I would probably, if I was really just starting, I wouldn't want to overwhelm myself with too much capability too soon. I get if I have a band and we want to record drums, bass, guitar at one time, that's complicated. We're going to need a lot of inputs and mics and all that. But otherwise, if I'm really wanting to learn how this thing works and expand eventually, I'm on team like headphones, microphone, interface, software. Let's make some music, keyboard, controller if you need it, and let's just figure out how this music production thing works. I had a customer at Sweetwater he had been like a lifelong postal worker, and he had saved up life savings of like $20,000, and he was going to buy himself a studio, like equipment for he'd always dreamed of having a home studio. And he called me up, told me his dream, and I'm like, that's a great dream. Have you ever recorded before? Nope. I was in a studio once in the 80s. And I said, okay, I can sell you this big palette of stuff, but I think you'd be better off let's just start with a couple pieces and start to learn the ropes. And he was insistent. So we sent him I got a picture of him with his arm on the pallet of all the gear that he bought. Called him a few months later, and he had plugged everything in, and that was it. Called him a year later, he hadn't made any music. It was too much. It was such a big hurdle to overcome. So I'm of the just minimum viable rig and make some music, and maybe then that's your permission to go and get the next piece of equipment that you might need. To me, that makes more sense than going too big too early.
I would tell people, have you heard of GarageBand?
Right.
Play with that for a while and see what happens. I mean, to be honest, if we go back to all of us, we started with something simple and then got more crazy. You're not as old as me, but I started when there were no computer things at all. And so it was like, 644 Tascam or something, Porta Studio, and MIDI tracks, right? And
I did my first album on this microphone. Do you remember when the computers used to come with this for, I don't even know what? What is that ancient piece of technology? Granted, mine was on a computer, but it was with this little 1/8" jack in the back of my parents' PC and some cakewalks thing that we had. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, I had cakewalk too.
It was terrible and amazing all at the same time.
I think I know the answer to this because I watch your channel. But can you pick one DAW, one digital audio workstation program? You only have one to pick. Which one is it going to be?
It's
right now.
PreSonus Studio One. Yeah.
I knew that.
I was a Pro Tools guy for a long time. We actually did some work for a rep firm that represented PreSonus, so I had to learn it just to be able to talk about it, and then it won me over. There was no reason for me to switch to it full time, but between just the fact that I like it and also it's Mac and PC, so it covers all your bases there. It's just been my go-to for a long time. Now, full disclosure, I do work for them now and make videos for them, but I used their stuff for a long time before that happened.
Cool.
Yeah.
What are your runners-up for professional music making and mixing or recording and then mixing? Are different DAWs better for different things? I know what I believe, but
yeah, I love how you're not going to tell me. I never disliked Pro Tools. It gets a lot of hate, but I liked it. It was a useful tool, especially because I was doing mostly just audio recording and editing. I would go back to that probably in a heartbeat. I used Logic for about a year, loved it, especially all the virtual instrument stuff and the MIDI stuff you could do seemed kind of just really easy to get great sounds right out of the box. Ableton's really fun. I don't know it very well. I just use it for looping and messing around. That would probably be my fourth place, but yeah.
I am a Logic guy, but only because I started using it way before there was any instruments. I don't even think there was any instruments. I started using it back in Cakewalk days when everything was just a sequencer. There was no audio associated with it. And then, eventually late 90s when Pro Tools got 24 tracks of digital, all the other DAWs started adding audio. And Pro Tools was like no MIDI and then
Right.
they added MIDI. It was kind of backwards.
Yeah.
But I'm a Logic guy. I did a special recently. If I had to like switch, which one would I switch to? And I went through all of the major DAWs, including Ableton, FL Studio, if you want to call that a DAW. Just kidding. People know my thoughts about FL. But I ended up with Pro Tools likely. I mean, I've known Pro Tools since I moved to Nashville, or before I moved to Nashville, because once you start working with a music city and music professionals, especially engineers, they're professional engineers at a studio in a recording town. You're going to have to deal with Pro Tools because they are. It's built for engineers. It looks like engineers. It still looks the same. I called a session up from I was watching somebody's YouTube video from like 2012. It looks exactly the same, but that's a different one because that's for studio recording and then the same engineers are usually mixing, so they mix on. You have the money to buy one microphone under $500, and let's say it's mostly for vocals. What's it going to be?
Roswell. If you're familiar with them, Roswell Pro Audio. A friend of mine started this microphone.
Aliens.
Yeah, it's in Area 51. So it's a guy named Matt McGlynn. He maintained this microphone database for years online where you could find every microphone. He eventually developed his own mics. Roswell Pro Audio is what they're called. But the Mini K47, I want to say it's maybe $400 now. It's fantastic. It's like kind of a 47 capsule. It's just, I haven't found anything that it doesn't sound good on. He makes others, but that would probably be the one under 500.
Very good. All right. So same question, but for audio interface.
So the $500 gets me. So if it was under $500, I'd go with one of the new. Personas has these new quantum interfaces, desktop and rack mount ones that have. I guess they have it. They have a smaller one with like 2 or 4 inputs and a bigger one with 8 inputs. So I'd get the biggest one I could get for $500. It's a good sounding interface. Obviously, I'm a Personas fanboy, and these have a direct a reamp output built in. So now that Fender owns Personas, they're like, let's throw a little guitar thing in there, so you could reamp guitars without needing like a separate reamp box, which is kind of fun.
I'm looking at my Revelator IO24 right now by Personas. Well, it's good. I wanted something that looped back so I could do a lot of stuff. And not every interface, surprisingly, loops back very easily. And so I needed that feature, and I wanted something. This was $200 or less, probably. So I'm not recording seriously other than for this or some vocals. I don't do really anything else. So not even on the semi-pro side of recording here in this little room. This is a writing room, really.
Yeah.
Same question, but for monitors. Near fields. Monitors we would monitor on a desk.
Yes, the speakers. I'm probably gonna. So here's the thing: I'll use something and then I'll just use it forever. So I don't really know what's out there. The ones I have in front of me are more than $500. So honestly, I've listened to the Personas Eris line. They've got whatever the most expensive you can get there, at least the 5-inch woofer on those. Those sound good. You can't crank them. They don't have quite the headroom that I'd like to have, but for under $500, those are fantastic.
Since you are a Personas Studio One guy, and it works on PC or Mac, do you have any care about which is better to work on, a PC or Mac in music these days?
I prefer Mac, but I can't make any case of it being better or worse. It's literally what I've always used for making music. Since college, at least. So I had a Mac Mini and with Pro Tools, and that's just what I've always used. So, yeah.
I used to be like a very middle of the road here. As a matter of fact, behind me, I used to have a PC and I used to have, and then a Mac, and I had both. When I didn't use a Mac until I bought a Mac because of Logic. That's when Apple bought Logic. I had to switch to a Mac. That's why I have a Mac now. Is still because of Logic, probably.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I do think it's a little easier in general operating system wise and file system wise, and a lot of just weird virus stuff and stuff you have to deal with PCs, to be honest.
And hardware compatibility. When there are a million different motherboards to choose from, it's real hard to make your hardware work with all of them. So you have to be real careful about what you buy and which motherboard you have. If it's compatible with that USB device you want to get, you just don't have that as much. It either works with the handful of Mac models that exist or not, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And you know, you don't have to answer so many questions. What kind of this are you going to have? What kind of that are you going to have? What are you going to stick in here? What there? And I know they're coming out with single body Mac Mini type PCs now, but I still think the Mac Mini is the best answer for someone who needs a dependable computer and wants to upgrade it every few years.